Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. This morning I have a guest that I haven't had on since the first few months that I was doing this program. She's a registered Lilydale medium, a certified spiritual life coach. She teaches workshops in self-improvement, spirituality, healing, and gives inspirational lectures. She's a professional violinist with the Erie Philharmonic, retired music teacher, host of A1R Psychic Radio Show, and she also now has a Lilydale radio program, which you can also find on her Facebook page, Embracing Your Essence, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. And she's writing a book called Stand in Your Power, Transform Self-Doubt into Confidence. I'd like you to welcome Colleen Vanderzyden. Thank you for coming on again.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here talking with you. It's always fun to talk with you. We have such good conversations.
Oh, we do, don't we? We had a good one on the telephone yesterday. Now, why are you writing a book?
It's actually an interesting story. Way back, and I don't know if I told you this story before about how I got on my path, but way back in 2000, I had this experience where I had this message to be who you are, for who you are is blessed. And that message, it came about in a very odd way. I had this old barn at my house in Fredonia, a pre-Civil War house in this old rotten barn, and you know, the snow was coming in through the holes in the roof and the wood was sagging, and finally it fell down one day, and I didn't know what to do with it. I ended up calling an electrician to come and check if the electrical wires were alive that were going into the barn, and he came, and instead of using some kind of mechanical device, he actually used dowsing rods. And these little L-shaped rods, you'd hold them up and they go a certain way for positive and another way for negative. And he did that, and I was like, what is this? This is really cool. So he ended up showing me how to do dowsing, and dowsing eventually I started going to conferences, because there's conferences for everything these days. And I went to this conference, and I was taking a workshop at one of the conferences where we were doing writing exercises, and during that writing exercise I got the message to be who you are, for who you are is blessed. And I didn't know who I was at all. I had no clue. And it was like I woke up and I realized I was not who I thought I was, and it set me on a path to figure out who I was. And along the way, as I'm on my path, I started to realize that my life, how I perceived my life to be, was one full of doubt. It was all full of doubt, and doubt shows up in different ways. And so the reason I'm writing the book now is so that I can share some of these ideas that I've learned to find myself, that other people can learn too. Because over the years, and this happened, that writing experience happened in 2000. So for 17 years, I've been on my path to figure out who I am, who I want to be, what I want to do, what I want to create. And I came up with all these different strategies and ideas, and as I was working with them, I realized my stress level had decreased. And I was much happier. And I noticed people were talking to me about things, and I would say, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? This is what happened for me. So I thought if I could get all my ideas in a book, then people could realize they actually have the power within themselves to change how they're perceiving their life, and they could have a happier life.
Well, you know, you just reminded me of a story I heard about a week or so ago on a radio program that's on Saturday and Sunday mornings on NPR radio. It's a game show called Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And it's like, you know, they have all these multiple choice questions and things. And one of the things that one of the callers was supposed to answer was which one of these things is actually true that was in the news this week. And I think it might have been about a European country or something like that. But anyway, it was something about one of the answers in the multiple choice to this question, and they usually are all pretty absurd, all of the answers, you know, so it makes it really hard to pick one out. But the one that turned out to be the right answer was that in this certain country, the people are actually in the water departments are actually using dowsing rods to find out where the water lines and things are when they, so that was pretty interesting. I thought, that in this day and age, I guess a lot of people found it hard to believe because of it's such an ancient way of looking for water.
Yeah, it really is, and people don't realize you can use dowsing not just for water, but for other things.
Right.
You can get information on whatever you want to get information on and verify things for yourself. It's like a tool for finding hidden things, water or not.
Now, is it a certain kind of wood that the dowsing rods have to be made out of in order for them to work?
Not that I know of. The ones I tend to use are metal, and they're shaped in an L. And you just hold them.
They're shaped in an L?
Yeah, and I love to get tools, like when I have my tuning forks for healing. And
you might remember when Colleen was on before, she showed us how to do healing with tuning forks.
Things like that are just so much fun, just to have something to play with. It's really a game. And I have these little teeny dowsing rods that are this big. You can hold them like this, and then I have bigger ones. I do have, you think of the dowsing as being traditional, the V-shaped thing, and you hold it this way, and the point is out there. I have a plastic one of those.
And the plastic one works too?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
It is interesting. It really is. And it must have some sort of it must have something to do with the shape.
You would think. I don't know.
And then there must be some sort of an electromagnetic something that happens.
Yeah, when I was really studying it at the conferences and things, they didn't really explain how it worked. They had theories. My theory is it has to be something like that. The electromagnetic, it's some connection with the energy in your body, basically, or the ground.
Okay, so she is going to be writing a book. What does it mean to stand in your power?
Yeah, the reason I named the book Stand in Your Power as the positive title of it before the subtitle was because when we have problems with self-doubt, we're not being true to ourselves, we don't believe in ourselves. We may not even know that, but we don't believe in ourselves, we don't trust our inner self. And when we move into that space of trusting ourselves, we have a power that we can access within ourselves. Everybody has this power. And whenever we feel helpless or hopeless, that's when we are not in our power. We've lost our power. And that's one of the ways that self-doubt can show up. And when we stand in our power, we're able to handle our life challenges better. We're able to create the life we want to create. We're able to, we just feel better, we're happier. Things don't bother us as much. And so many times I meet people who are, well, I can't do anything about it. It's like, what do you mean? Really? You can't do anything about it? Which is a sign that they're just not in their power. Yeah. How do you feel when you're in your power, like when you feel good?
Oh, I figure it must be what a natural high feels like, I remember being a little girl when I was a preschool age girl. I never had any bad experiences like with other people or anything. And kindergarten wasn't too bad either, but when I went into first grade, there was a couple of things that happened. One was the gymnasium floor they waxed the gymnasium floors before the school year starts, and I remember we were playing Duck, Duck, Goose in gym class, and I wasn't running very fast because I didn't want to slip and fall down. That was my reasoning. So other children started referring to me as Slowpoke, and it was kind of like it was decided at that point in time that I wouldn't be one of the people that was popular, I guess. But then, and then also in first grade, there was a boy, a third grade boy, I was in first grade, and a third grade boy that rode the same school bus that I did, decided I was supposed to be his girlfriend. And one day when we got off the bus and were arriving at school, and I was walking past his classroom to get to my classroom, he was whistling at me, and there was a girl from my class standing out in the hall in front of the door to our class, and she asked me who was that, and I said, oh, that, I just sort of commented, that's my boyfriend. And she gave me a dirty look. And it was like my life in school was never the same after that. She was always getting other kids, putting them up to picking on me and stuff like that, you know. And it really affected my sense of self-esteem after that, because but what I didn't know was that she was probably jealous because I had a boyfriend and she didn't.
Right.
And so basically it was a lifelong thing. Not a lifelong thing, but I mean during the school years, you know,
Right.
with her causing trouble for me all the way through. And you know, it created a lot of self-doubt, you know.
Yeah.
So,
these things, you know, something like that happens to you when you're young.
Yeah.
You know, they stay with us, and they form a belief system about ourselves. We form the belief system to survive, you know, bullying, or we take what people say,
We
or a
believe
perception.
what people start telling you negative things about yourself, and you believe it because you don't know any better. You're a little kid, and you know, that's, and so you don't know how else to take it. Nobody's ever told you you don't have to believe what other people say to you about yourself.
Exactly. And then that stays with you forever. And it does form a foundation for how you believe you are and who you believe you are. And for you to actually now, at your age, still remember that story so strongly, so vividly, and so many people have something like that.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize, sometimes they don't even make the connection.
Right.
You know, they don't even realize they believe they're slow, or they believe they're not good enough because of something some child
Some
said.
stupid little thing,
Even if it wasn't even, if they didn't even say it, but you just, you got the impression
It's
somebody
like
thought
nobody
it.
ever warns you before you start first grade. You know that kids are probably going to do this and say that, but you don't have to believe any of it, you know, because it's just, but you know, as an adult, I have read things that were written by psychologists and like that, and they say that people who bully other people actually have, they don't feel good about themselves, and it's their way of trying to make themselves feel better by belittling other people.
Yes, they're definitely insecure. And it's funny because we're talking about who we are as people, you know, and the doubt, how that stays with us all the time. They try to cover it up, and then the recipients of their issues create a whole new problem for themselves. Oh, how did you get out of that? Like, when did you come to your awareness that this isn't an accurate belief about myself?
Well, the last couple of summers before I graduated from high school, now I didn't get a lot of dates with people I went to school with, but I worked in a diner, and I noticed that a lot of the male customers were attracted to me, and you know, so that helped a lot. Another thing that helped a lot was when I was 25 years old, I started practicing yoga. And the yoga teachers, you know, like they encourage you to feel positive about yourself, to feel good about yourself and everything. And they give you all of these suggestions on how you can improve your life. And one thing that was very dramatic about yoga was when I'd be doing the physical exercises early in the morning, apparently what happens is it starts sort of an emotional cleansing, and a memory would come up of something that somebody had done to hurt my feelings when I was a kid or whatever, and I would start to cry. You know, I would just be sobbing, you know, and just wouldn't be able to stop, you know, and it was very cleansing and powerful, you know, that I started to feel good about who I was. And over the, you know, over the years, that rather than having self-doubt, I've come to feel that I'm lucky to be who I am and have the knowledge that I have, that I'm really just lucky to be who I am. And a lot of people who maybe were more popular than me and everything when I was young, you know, some of those people, because I've, you know, educated myself on how to exercise right, need a good diet and everything that I don't have, all of those so-called age-related health problems that a lot of people in their 60s have and things like that. And I realized that it's a blessing to have all of this knowledge, to be able to take care of myself with, and now I can honestly say I think I'm one of the luckiest people in the world, probably. So,
yeah, and that's a good awareness to have, because so many people, again, don't understand that. They're not even open to that. So, and having the awareness that you've moved through it, and you get to a better place. And even if it's something still pops up, you have that awareness to be able to shift it in your own way.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So what is self-doubt exactly?
Yeah, and it's so not trusting yourself, not believing in yourself. And it's funny, too, because if you talk about self-doubt, people say they think it's just we doubt we can do something, you know, and that definitely is a part of it, but it's an external and an internal thing, because our beliefs, our self-critical voice, what's ever going on in our head is affecting our external goals and dreams. And even as I'm working on this book and writing the book, I've seen more and more of my own self-doubt popping up, which, how ironic and irritating at the same time. You know, it's like, really? Are you kidding me? So I have this self-doubt. You know, when I first had the idea to write a book, it was a long time ago, but with working and performing and everything else, I just didn't have the time, or that was my excuse anyway. I didn't have the time and to get to it. And I finally decided I was going to get to it, and as I started working on it, and I've got millions of notes and pages and all sorts of things, I could hear my voice at times going, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You can do this. You know, maybe nobody wants to listen to you anyway, you know, and all of that. And the same thing happened with me when I first started the first radio show I had. And then they contacted me, and I'm going, oh, I don't know. And then I started thinking about this. It was, you know, it goes back to who you are. Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe you have things to share? You use the excuses. Well, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know the technology. I can't do it. I don't know the technology. And when we have something that shows up, I started discounting what I did have, the knowledge I did have for the radio show. You know, I had done some voiceover training and had done voiceovers for commercials and things like that. I had spoken in many places, given lots of lectures and stuff. So I had a lot of information I could share. I didn't have to worry about the technical because I had a producer. They took care of it. They would tell me exactly what I had to do. You know, so it was funny how I discounted the good things that I already knew and let my doubt overtake it. And so with doubt, it was good for me to step into it and just do it anyway, even with the doubt.
Yeah, you have to be really careful. You know, sometimes you'll be sharing information with people, and they'll quite often give you an argument about it. I mean, you'll know that what you're talking about is a fact. You've had the evidence, you've seen the evidence to back it up, and people will argue with you about it, you know. It's, I almost find myself wondering if people don't argue with you about it just because they don't want to believe it's true or something. You know?
It's their ego or their own belief system stepping in and saying, that can't be true because I don't believe it. And, you know, as you know, our lives, we shift, our beliefs change all the time. And what we think is true, and it turns out not to be true. I did a whole radio show once on things are not what they seem.
Oh, yeah.
And this came about because I heard our clock in the house chime 14. And so
you were counting it?
I was counting.
And you heard 14 chimes.
I heard 14 chimes, and I'm going, well, that can't possibly be true.
Because clocks don't do
They don't do 14. And, you know, and then I started thinking about the things that we think are true that are not. And I said to somebody once, okay, so let's just say some things, and I used myself as an example. So let's just say these things. I am 5'3". Is it true? Well, I don't really know. I haven't measured myself. I may not be 5'3", whether or not I ever was. My license says I'm 5'4", but I just put that down there back when I was 21 and got my license. So am I really 5'4" or 5'3"? Maybe I'm 5'2 3/4. So that may not be true. You know, so I start going through things like that, and you ask really stupid questions of yourself. Is it true? And you start with something stupid like that, then it's easier to move into the bigger questions. Is it true that that person right there is being a jerk to me? Maybe not. Maybe I just think they're being a jerk, but they're not really being a jerk. But if I start with those simple things first, you know, like I can say, is my hair blonde? Well, sort of, but is it really blonde? Is that truly the color? Well, not really. You know? So, you know, you can question every single thing about ourselves in a fun game way. It's not, you know, it's not another opportunity to put yourself down. But then when something happens that bothers you, you can question that too. Is it true? Is that person a jerk? Did that person really cut me off because they're trying to be mean to me? Probably not, you know? And so, but people who aren't aware aren't going to be able to do that. But it is a fun game to play for people who like to look at their lives in a different way.
There's another game I heard about when I was back in my 20s too, where two people can sit facing each other and ask the question, who are you? Back, you know, back and forth, and you say things about yourself, and after you played the game for a certain amount of minutes or whatever, the things you're saying about yourself start to not make sense, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we start to get into our own little head again. Our heads are something. They're powerful. We have powerful heads in there.
So how does self-doubt affect us, and how does it show up in how we act?
Yeah, you know, I like to call some of the effects of self-doubt symptoms.
Oh.
We have symptoms of self-doubt. You know, we have that self-critical, negative inner voice that tells us we're not good enough, that tells us we'll never be good enough, that gives us the excuses. We blame other people or our circumstances for why we feel bad. We don't take responsibility for things. Sometimes because of that voice, we don't go after our dreams and our goals. We just don't.
Right.
You know, and that's the first sign usually for people that something's not quite right, that we're not going after something. Well, I want to do this, but we never seem to get to it. I want to create this, and I never do. Years ago, I wanted to go, I had this belief system that if I wanted to go to this Caribbean vacation, I had to be in a relationship because it had to be romantic.
Oh, you had to have a love interest go with
Love
you.
interest, yeah, you know, because
You couldn't just go by yourself.
Exactly. So I had this belief somehow, probably from advertisements, that if you were going to go to the Caribbean and, you know, go to one of those nice resorts or something, you needed to have a partner there. And I didn't have a partner. And finally, one day, I said, you know, I really want to go. So I'm going to, and then when I realized I was thinking I had to have, you know, a love interest or whatever, I actually went with my two kids, who were probably about 5 and 7 at the time, and we had the greatest time.
Oh, sure.
And something as simple as that, you know, just a belief that you don't even know you have. So it'll show up like that. It shows up when we suppress ourselves rather than standing up for ourselves, telling somebody what we really think or what we really feel, or letting somebody else influence us or manipulate us. So that chips away at that power that we all have. Yeah, it is something else. I don't like it.
Yeah. How does self-doubt interfere with our responses to life's problems?
Oh, yeah. We become helpless. We become hopeless. You know, we start to recognize, we start to see, I think, how the problems affect us and we don't feel good about whatever's happening. And how we respond to the problem, as simple as, you know, the example of somebody being a jerk. And we think they're being a jerk So we get all worked up. So our emotions actually send us on a path to figure out who we are and who we want to be and what we're going to do if we pay attention to the emotions. Now, some people like to moan, whine, and complain.
You know they do. I've noticed that. It almost seems like they in a way, it almost seems like it's a way of getting attention for some people.
It is. They would rather be unhappy and miserable than take some kind of action to change their lives. They don't want to figure out who they really are inside, and they probably don't know again. They have a story they tell themselves. And I love to listen to people's stories sometimes, the things they say. I can't do this, I can't do that. I had a client once who was complaining that for whatever reason her son wouldn't take his family and come visit her.
Oh.
And she had the belief system that the kids should come visit the mother. She did not have the belief system that she should go there.
Oh, I see.
So she hadn't seen her grandkids in something like 2 years.
Oh.
Because according to her, the son refused to bring the family to see her.
Did they live far away from her?
No.
No?
They didn't live far away. And it was within certainly a drivable distance.
Oh.
And part of it was that her son and wife of the son were very busy. And it was, they had a lot to do. They had 2 or 3 kids. It was hard to find the time to spend an afternoon to go over there or an evening or something. Well, this woman was taking this very personally, which is another way self-doubt will show up, taking it very personally that for whatever reason they didn't like her or love her. And I said to her, well, you could look at this in a different way. Let's just look at it in a different way. That you could go there. And, it seems simple now, doesn't it? It seems simple. And she says, no, they need to come visit me. So she was so stuck in the story in her head, this belief system, I like to call the belief systems BS, that her kids had to come see her, that she was happy being miserable. And she had no desire to get out of that because she was right and they were wrong.
Oh.
And this was her belief. And listening to this, how this belief system, how she didn't believe in herself, she didn't trust herself enough to question, is this an accurate thing? Is this something I want to prolong? And as far as I know, she has yet to go visit them.
Really?
She just won't do it. And she hasn't seen the grandkids in so long. And I thought, why would you create misery for yourself? It's a crazy thing. It's absolutely crazy. And watching that story and as it develops, self-doubt also affects us with fear, outright fear.
Oh.
Outright fear.
Yeah, it does.
It will stop us from doing things. And I had an interesting bout of it in the summer. I don't know. I should have written a book on something else so I didn't experience so much self-doubt. I should have written it on winning $1 million or something, and then maybe I would have gotten $1 million so I could figure out how to use it. Solve that problem instead. How to not give it away. Maybe the next book I'll do that. But in August I had this fear. I was doing some readings at Lilydale, and they were going fine, but I was questioning, was that good enough? Was that, this and that? And I just kept questioning. And I walked out of my reading room into my living room, and I said to myself, I have got to stop this. What is the problem? And I was talking about that on my radio show that night, so of course it was probably in my mind. And I looked at my phone, and I had a message from a national TV show who was in Lilydale this past summer filming, which I don't think I can really talk about too much yet, but it's going to be on in the fall. And they were filming in Lilydale, and they wanted me to do a reading the next day for the show.
For their show?
For their show. And I had done a reading at the Stump and connected with this young man and had brought him a powerful message, and he had emotional reaction. So they had interviewed him, and then they decided they wanted me to do another reading for him, a full-length, real reading. So I get this message from their producer, and whoa, talk about confronting the self-doubt, because now what am I going to do? Am I going to say, no, I'm not going to do it because I'm too scared? Yes, I'm going to do it and I'm still going to be too scared. How am I going to move into this? So I didn't call him back right away. I had a little bit of time, went home, talked to my daughter. She's very wise for 22. And she says, Mom, you have to do it. And I thought, oh, I know I do, but... And then I read through my ideas for my radio show that night. And by the time I got done, I thought, oh my gosh, Jess, you have to do it. Because are you going to let doubt stop you from a new experience, living your dream, confronting your fears? You're not going to get rid of your fears. You can't say, oh, they're magically gone. You just have to figure out how to handle them. Same way you have to figure out how to handle self-doubt. So I said, okay, I'm just going to have to trust that it's going to work. I just have to trust. And of course I'm going, help me, help me. So I called them back and I said to the lady, look, I'm a little bit concerned. I want to make sure this is a positive experience for everyone. And this station and the person who was doing the whole thing, it was all about the community. And they were very much enjoying their visit in Lilydale. So it wasn't like an expose, trying to catch people or anything like that, negative thing. And I didn't want to do that, of course. And so I explained it. She says, well, we'll just see what happens. So I get there the next morning and whew, you can just feel it, but I'm like, I have to trust this is going to work. I tell you, that was one of the best readings I gave. Oh, wow. And the rest of the readings I had that day were amazing. And I said to myself, well, apparently when you step into your fear, the universe, God, the energy up there, the spirit energy, whatever it is, will come in and get you. They'll have your back. They'll help you. And it was a huge lesson for me because I didn't get rid of the fear, but I had to move. I had to make that conscious choice to move into the trusting and being able to trust that whatever is happening is for my highest and best, and trusting that whatever happens is going to work the way it's supposed to. Whether or not it's the way I want it to is another question. But having stepped into that did show me the power we have within ourselves to step into that trust, my inner power of trusting. And even if I don't believe it all the way, that action makes the difference. Oh, you know? Yeah. It was something. I tell you, man, after that was over with, I was like, oh, thank God. Yeah. Let's see. How can we change self-doubt into confidence, and what is confidence? Yes, and sometimes people think confidence is all about not having the fear. I'm just going to confidently do everything. And we have this perception that other people have that. We think they have it. We're comparing ourselves. They're confident. Well, they're not. I don't know anybody who's truly, well, maybe a couple people who think they're truly confident. And, we have to step into that fear. We have to go with it. And to be able to change it, it's an awareness. To be aware that you can change yourself. Some people don't believe they can change at all. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it is. Yeah, I saw this educational article, and when I was teaching, I very rarely read that stuff. And for some reason, this one I read, and it was all on growth versus fixed mindsets. And a person named Carol Dweck researched this and has a whole book on it and everything. And it was very interesting to me, because I had never thought about it, that I had a growth mindset. I believed if I worked hard, if I tried, if I learned new things, I could change how I perceive things. I could create different things and all of that. But then there are other people who have a fixed mindset, who believe I was born this way and nothing I do is going to change it. And that was very eye-opening to me as a teacher and as a person, because that explained so much. And I remember somebody saying to me once, well, that's the way I am and I'm not going to change. And I'm thinking, okay. And I found that odd. But now I understand that he really believed that he couldn't change. So to shift the self-doubt, you kind of have to move into an awareness that it's possible. If you don't think you can change it, then it's not going to change. And you understand that very well, I'm sure. And the other thing, too, is to recognize that there's so many other options out there for life. We don't have to stay where we are. No. At all. No. And just knowing that it can be. I mean, we were talking before about all the changes that happen in our lives. Right. We believe this, then we believe that. We choose this path, then we choose that path. Right. And that's wonderful that we can do that. And it's very similar to transforming self-doubt, being able to move into that power of letting it go. I find a lot of people have a problem with self-love.
Yeah, that might have a lot to do with how they were treated by other people as they were growing up, like my example of myself, you know.
Yeah.
I can remember times as a kid wishing I was somebody else, you know. Now I don't feel that way, but
Yeah.
I can remember times in my life when I did. So,
Yes, and part of that, it's a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because wishing you want to be somebody else sometimes can set that into motion. You know, and it could be a less than good thing if we use that as a limitation and we don't use it to move forward.
right.
You know, because self-doubt does limit us too in those beliefs. Yeah, some of the times, you know, when I listen to those, the self-critical voice people have, and some of my coaching clients in particular, I've started giving every coaching client an assignment of writing 100 things they love about themselves.
100, wow.
100. I started out at 50 years ago, and I found that 50 wasn't enough. That
So now you do 100.
100. Once you get past 40 or 50, you really start to move into some deeper things. You know, I am a nice person. You start to see how sometimes your beliefs weren't correct, and you start to see how they can actually be better.
Well, you know, in my adult life, as I've learned how to do various different things, I find myself feeling very surprised that when I try learning something new, that I actually pick it up quite quickly and turn out to be really good at it, and going, where did that come from, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I'm, you know, actually pretty smart, and I learn, and
Yes, and
So-
you have that growth mentality, that growth mindset, that you can create something else if you want to.
Yeah.
You can learn and grow and experience life at a different level.
yeah, it's like I'd have this feeling of, wow, I'm actually kind of good at this. I didn't know that I could do such and such a thing, you know, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
So it's always a nice surprise, actually, when I realize it, you know. And I mean, I'll try learning something just because I want to, and then be surprised at the results.
that it actually works, and you
Yeah.
can do it,
Yeah,
and it's fun.
and it is.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that self-doubt stops us from taking that risk of even trying.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know, I don't want to try that because I'm not going to be any good at it. You know, and it's like, well, why? Why wouldn't you want to try? It would be fun, you know, just to try it out.
Right,
You know?
yeah. I know.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, some things turn out to be sometimes some of your favorites of all the things you do, you know, once you try it.
Right. And being able to take a risk, it's hard, you know, because we judge ourselves, and we don't, you know, we just don't think we're good enough. We can't do it, so why do it?
Yeah.
You know, and rather than looking at life as more of an experiment, we're here to have fun, have a
Oh,
good time,
sure,
try some stuff
yeah,
out. If you're horrible at it, oh well, wasn't it fun to try?
Yeah.
And you never know.
Yeah. This next question is sort of similar. What are some strategies people could use to transform doubt?
Yes. And I love strategies. I love practical action steps. I love, you know, the simple thing that, like the asking the question, is it true? You know, is what I believe to be true? You know, that's a little bit of a game you can play. I have a mind game, I call it, of what if. It's
What
called
if?
What if? And people tend to use it a different way than I do, because something happens to well, what if it gets worse? You know, what if this? What if that? And they
yeah,
always go to
yeah.
the worst side. What if it gets worse? Now, what I use, it's a similar but different. And it started when my daughter, she was probably 6 or 7, and I was dropping her off at a dancing lesson. And it was a one-way road, and so I parked the way you're supposed to on a one-way road. And she looked in the direction she should have looked for the one-way road, and then started to run across the street, and a car came from the wrong direction on this one-way road. And
no.
there was no time to say anything, to shout, to anything. And all I could do was watch. And she's in the road, and literally that car stopped 3 inches from her.
Oh, yeah.
My heart, of course, was pounding. Her heart was pounding. I don't know why that person was driving the wrong way on the road. Her heart had to be pounding as well. And after that, I started thinking, oh my goodness, what if she had died? What if she had been hit by that car and had been seriously hurt? And what I noticed as I was asking this question for the next 2 or 3 days was that I started to appreciate those small moments.
The
that
miracles
were right there in front of me. You know, that small moment that she was there in front of me, that small moment of the funny things she would say, the small moment of, you know, picking her up in the car and taking her someplace. I mean, all those things that we discount. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and they show you all of the normal things before the tragedy happens, you know? And it was kind of like that. I could see the normal things and how special they were. So I started using that as a game and reframing. And I walked in, and here's an example of how I used it that shows me a lot of things. I walked into my Lilydale house the first year I bought the house. And my boyfriend had walked in ahead of me. And he came and had the door open just this much to show me. He's like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." And I'm going,
"Don't worry, it'll be
what happened?" Well, it turned out a pipe had frozen and burst.
Oh.
He opens the door, there is water streaming. Niagara Falls in the back of my house.
Oh.
Water like you cannot believe. Now, we had started remodeling, but not that section. So I'm looking at it.
Fortunately.
Yes. And I'm going, oh my goodness.
What if it had happened after you had done the remodeling?
Exactly. And this was fun. You know, I thought, okay, so what if it had happened when I had gone someplace and I hadn't been there? It didn't look like it had been running too long, maybe a couple of days. You know, I don't go over there every day in the winter, you know, so maybe it could have been running for a week. Could have totally flooded the place. And so here's a very interesting part. Because of the mess, we had to tear that whole back part apart.
The whole back part of the house?
The whole back. We had to take the walls down, we had to take the insulation, the ceiling had collapsed, I mean, everything. We found an extension cord above the ceiling that was tucked into the insulation, plugged into an outlet. Why there's an outlet up in this ceiling, I don't know. And it wasn't plugged in all the way.
Oh.
Now, if that had not happened, I wouldn't have known about that extension cord up there and that it wasn't plugged in, and the house could have caught on fire.
Oh.
And if a house catches on fire in Lilydale, the houses are so close, they're so old, that whole place could have gone.
Yeah.
So it was really a blessing in disguise when
the water pipe
broke. So I started out with, what if it had been running longer? What if I had already remodeled it, like you said? What if this? But then after we got more information, I could see the benefits of this horrible situation. You know, I mean, it was going to cost me more money and all that, but you know what? That's okay. So I always use that if something happens. If I don't leave my house on time, I'm going to get, because I came across a car accident once. If I had left when I wanted to, I would have been in that car accident. You know, what if I had left on time? I would have been in that car accident. It calms me down if I start to get stressed out over something. It's a weird way of playing the game. You can also do it the other way, and if you have a problem, say, well, what if this turns into the best thing that ever happened to me? You know, you can do that too.
That's like the last time a tornado passed through the Mayville area. I had been taking care of an elderly man on a country road that day in the Hartfield area, and his daughter wasn't really scheduled to come back till 6, but she came back like about maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon or something. I can't remember exactly what time the storm went through, but she told me I'd have to leave because they were predicting 75-mile-an-hour winds. You'll have to go home. And so I left. It was just pouring rain when I pulled out of their driveway, and as I pulled into the village of Mayville, it looked like the weather was clearing up, you know, and the sun was starting to shine a little bit. And I had wanted to go get there was something I wanted to get from Lighthouse Point grocery store. So I So I made the left turn off of Chautauqua Street onto Lakeview Avenue and cut, rather than going up through the red light, and cut across there to avoid going through the middle of town. And I remember driving past the liquor store down by the lake there, and their open sign was lit, and I said to myself, well, they're open, they must not be worried about the weather. And but then after I got a little ways down the road, as I'm crossing the bridge there, just before you get to Webb's, there was a cop car pulled over to the side of the road on the other side of the road that had been coming from the other direction. And on the curb in front of Webb's, there was a man standing there looking in the direction I'd just come from. And then when I got to Lighthouse Point, there were all kinds of cars. There was a lot of cars. I mean, their parking lot was just full of cars. And people were standing outside looking at something in the direction that I just come from. And so I went to see what they were looking at, and in that puny amount of time, that minute or so it took me to get from where the liquor store was to Lighthouse Point grocery store, a tornado had come through there right after I had driven through there, and was moving out onto the lake. And I mean, if I'd been a moment later coming through there, I would have, me and my car would have gotten lifted up and blown it out across the lake, you know. That's just how close it was, you know. It was incredible. It's like those movies where the hero manages to rescue somebody just a split second before they would have gotten killed, you know, or something like that. It reminded me of what you were saying about your little girl crossing the street and everything.
Yeah, and it's like a divine timing thing.
It is.
So where that person came back early and you left early, and everything was just, something happened.
But you know, I actually kind of enjoyed seeing the tornado because I actually got to stand there and look at one up close and personal.
Close enough, but
and
not
I was
too
happy
close.
that I happened to be there to be able to see it, you know. It turned into, I really enjoyed the experience. I was spellbound. I couldn't take my eyes off of it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So,
it's cool. I always thought I wanted to see a tornado from a safe distance.
I'm not sure I was at such a safe distance.
No, it doesn't sound like you were.
Yeah, really.
I remember seeing videos of that on Facebook.
Oh, did you?
I did. I was like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I know. I saw a video of a tornado when I was in 4th grade, and speaking of memories that stick with us, that stuck with me, and so I have a healthy respect and fear for tornadoes.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
It's funny though that I didn't feel at the moment I was standing in the Lighthouse Point parking lot, I wasn't feeling afraid or anything. Spellbound is really more the word. It's like I just have to look at this. This is so amazing. You don't get to see something like this in person.
Yeah, not much around here.
Around here, no. Once in a great while, maybe every 20 years or something like that. But
yeah. And to be able to look at that experience and recognize, oh, wow, what if I had been there, you know, a minute on the other side there, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's great to find those blessings.
I know.
And we appreciate the experience more, even the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
What benefits have you seen from changing your life and transforming the self-doubt?
Oh, you know, the biggest one that I noticed, and I noticed accidentally because I had no idea finding out who I really was going to help me with this, was the stress. I tend to be a stressed person. Even after years of growing and learning, I still can fall into that, you know. And I've noticed my reactions to situations are different now. I don't react the same way. I was on a plane, my daughter was in college and she had done was doing a semester abroad in England. And I was on a plane or getting ready to go visit her, and I had it all worked out. I could have a whole week with her around Thanksgiving. It was going to be great. And so we get on the plane finally, and we're taxiing to take off. And literally, just at that moment where you're going to take off, he slams on the brakes and the plane swerves.
Oh, no.
And you see everyone looking out the window, and you hear the chatter. What's going on? What happened? What's out there? What, is something on the runway? What's going on? What's going on? And as we go back to the gate, the pilot announces that there is a slight mechanical problem, and don't worry, it will resolve it, you know, all that. So of course you get back in there, and you right away, everybody gets in line to find another flight, because a slight mechanical problem, God knows what that means. So we're all in line, and I get there, and I'm on the phone at the same time, 24 hours before I can get another flight.
Oh.
And I'm going, oh no, now before I would have reacted and I would have been all stressed out. Oh no, I'm losing a day of this time with Laura. I don't know if I'll be able to get another flight because I was going to Philadelphia, and so I had a connecting flight. I don't know if it's going to work. I would have been all worried and stressed and all of that. And instead, because of everything I'd done and everything I'd learned, I thought, well, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to trust it's going to happen. I'm just going to sit down and wait and see what happens. Now, this person I had sat next to on the plane originally was a manager for a rock band.
Oh, really?
And he was very...
was it a famous rock band?
Semi-famous.
Semi-famous?
Yes. And I don't want to say anything else about what the group is, because people will know, and I don't want him to find out I'm talking about him. But he wasn't the nicest person.
Oh,
you know, he was very stressed, and he was used to having his way. Well, he's up there yelling at the gate person, the person at the counter, and saying she's incompetent, she's not nice, they're rude, these people don't know what they're doing. Well, he walks away finally, and he comes over to me, and he looks at me, and he goes, why are you so happy? And I just kind of go,
kind of like verbally attacking you?
Yeah, because I was having fun. I was talking to the person I ended up sitting next to when we were getting ready to take off, because they'd moved me. And I said, well, you know, I'm sure it'll work out. I'd much rather the plane abort on the ground than in the air.
Exactly.
And he's looking at me, goes, oh, but they're rude and they're incompetent and they don't know what they're doing. And I said, you know what, I think she's doing the best she can. And he goes, oh, and just walked away. And I thought,
well,
wow.
At least the pilot, when he noticed something was wrong, had the good sense to stop.
He stopped. I mean, because, you know, and I don't know to this day what it was.
He didn't want to risk the lives of himself and all of his passengers.
Yeah, so, you know, you have to, so I had moved into this trust that whatever's happening is supposed to be happening. I have a phrase I say a lot, that's everything works out perfectly. Not always like I planned sometimes, but it works out perfectly the way it's supposed to. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a good time. So I had a good time talking to people, and as it turns out, a lot of people took different flights, but our flight ended up leaving. We were late. And I got to Philadelphia, and literally I was running through the terminal to mine. And you have to, Philadelphia Airport, I'd never been there before, it's huge. You have to take a shuttle, and it goes on the tarmac, and you got to wait for planes to pass. And so there are a few other people on there who were in a rush as well. So I get to the right terminal, I'm running, I get to the gate, and they go, hi, Colleen, so glad you made it. And I got on the plane. I was the last person on the plane. They had waited for me. Then they shut the door and we took off. So it worked out perfectly. I mean, I did strain my legs because I'm not a runner.
Okay.
But it did work out perfectly. Now, the guy I was sitting next to originally, he didn't get his flight. He didn't get it.
Because he was being negative.
I don't know what happened, but either he'd missed his other flight, something had happened, but he didn't get his other flight, which kind of showed me, you know, maybe he needed another lesson. I know he was frustrated and irritated and all of that and impatient, but, you know, being able to step into that, trusting that whatever's happening is supposed to be there for my highest and best, has helped me with my stress so much. And I recognize I have the power to change things. And just to think about that story is just so much fun.
Well, years ago, on a Canadian TV channel, I used to watch a yoga instructor. And I remember her saying, you know, how when you're in situations where you have to wait, like at an airport terminal or something, you can do some yoga exercises while you're waiting. You know, it's a good opportunity to get some exercise, you know, so.
Yeah. That's important. I remember Wayne Dyer saying that he used to meditate at a red light. And he said, don't worry, you don't have to worry about paying attention. The people behind you will let you know when you have to
They'll
go.
honk their
Oh my
horn.
God,
Yeah,
jeez.
yeah. Well, you know, I read a book by him one time where he said, call everybody by their first name. You know, if they have a title, if they're a doctor or, you know, or a politician, you know, somebody with a title, you know, where they're supposed to be somebody really, really important. Just put everybody on the same level and ask them what their first name is and then call them by that.
Well, you know, he's a fun one. Yeah, I know he's passed.
Yeah.
But I always talk about people who have passed in the present tense. You know, he's still here, you know, in my mind.
Right.
But he came to Lilydale years ago.
I remember.
And he got in line because he didn't want all those people to be waiting. He didn't think it was right. So even though he was speaking, he stood in line with the people to listen to himself speak. I know people have accused him of being egotistical and all of that, but you know, God knows where that comes from. But I find him to be a great guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's just a fun guy, and to stand in line to listen to yourself is interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're down to a little over a minute and a half here. Is there anything you wanted to make sure to mention before we go off the air?
Well, I think the biggest thing I'd like people to remember is that they have the power within themselves to change how they're experiencing life, the quality of their life. They can create whatever they want, and their self-doubt will actually lead them on the path. If they listen to their excuses, their whining, their moaning, that self-critical voice, that will take them where they need to go to make changes, if they're open for it. And if people want to find me, they can find me on my website, ColleenVanderzyden.com.
Okay. Well, thank you again for coming on today. We've come to the end of another episode. It's been fun.
It has been
of
fun.
Fresh Perspectives. And I will see the rest of you in a couple of weeks.